And MLB.com's Brian McTaggart joining us right now, and you can follow him at Brian McTaggart. That's his name. And he just witnessed Joe Espada officially get on board as the manager of the Houston Astros. How was that, Brian? Pretty low key since everyone knows him already?
Yeah, it was. It was really low key. I mean, everyone in the room knew him, and I think from the moment Dusty retired, that Espada, I think, was the front runner. Everybody knew that he's sort of been in line to get this job. I think for a few years now. I mean, this is a guy that's worked under 3 World Series winning managers, and Girardi, Hinch, and now Dusty Baker. I know that Joe's interviewed for a lot of jobs the last few years, didn't get them for whatever reason, but the fact that he waited it out and gets the Astros job, I think was just really gratifying for him. And, he spoke a lot about just this being his dream job. He spoke a lot about his family. And I think it'll be a pretty seamless transition for a team that thinks it can compete for a World Series championship once again next year.
Does it really matter? Does it really matter who they hire? Because this team, you can say, well, they didn't make the World Series. Like, okay, like there's obviously every team wants to upgrade. But this team is they're self-sustaining. So did it really matter who they hired? And maybe that's why Joe got the job?
Yeah, I think it matters. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, you could probably roll me out there and they would win, 85 games probably, or, if I didn't mess it up too much. But, there was also a little bit of a disconnect with Dusty and the front office, I think, that, led to, some things maybe not going on the field as well as the Astros would have hoped. And I think that new GM Dana Brown and Joe are very much aligned. Dana Brown wanted somebody who's a communicator. He used the word collaborative a lot. I don't think that was always the case with Dusty Baker. Dusty had done this for a long time, did things his way, and hey, he earned that right. I mean, he's won over 2,000 games now as a World Series. He did things his way, but that not always was the way that the front office wanted to operate. So, I think things are going to be a little more collaborative now, but the Astros returned 8 of their 9 starting position players. They returned their entire starting rotation. They returned their closer and their setup man. They're not going anywhere. But if they're healthy, it's a team that should be a 100-win team, a team that should be right there with the Rangers once again, and what should be a very wild AL West race next year.
Brian, are you at Minute Maid Park, or you have your own office at Minute Maid?
I am in the radio announcer's booth at Minute Maid. So, this is where I'm trying to Joe Espada's on the field right now taking pictures, so I'm kind of spying on him a little bit. But, I'm in it's a dark, dreary day here in Houston. So,
I could tell because I've done a ton of games in Houston. I could tell by the dreary lighting that you were definitely at Minute Maid. Definitely.
It's not easy to find a place with good lighting here at Minute Maid. So.
No, especially in the press boxes. They forgot about the lights. It's a great view, but it's not great lighting. Was there anybody else in the running? We heard Brad Ausmus. Was there anyone else? I mean, we kind of talked about this in the opening here, that this took a long time for a guy that was already there for 6 years and has already kind of seemed like the heir apparent to Dusty for a while. Was there anyone else there, and why did this take so long?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think the fact that a lot of names were thrown out there. You mentioned Ausmus, and everyone threw out a bunch of names. The fact that the only people we know for sure that interviewed for this job, or the only person, was Joe Espada, just leads me to believe that he was their guy all along. It took about 2 weeks. So one thing I know that Dana Brown, the owner of the team, Jim Crane, wanted Dana Brown, the GM, to do a search, to bring some guys in and interview. Even if he thought that Joe was the guy, he wanted Joe to get maybe some different perspectives from some other guys, get some experience interviewing guys. But it was really strange that the lack of names that came out. You did not hear blank interviewed for the Astros. It was only Joe Espada. So I think he was the guy all along. And whether they had to dot some I's, cross some T's, I don't know why it took so long. But yeah, it's been about 2 weeks since Dusty announced his retirement, and they finally got around to announcing it. But I thought all along from the get-go, as just most people did, that Joe was going to be the front runner for this job, just because he had been here so long. He's an experienced manager. He wants this job very badly. But I'm sure they had no shortage of candidates blowing up Dana Brown's phone, considering the Astros are a turnkey team. They're going to be in the hunt next year, and you have an owner that's committed to winning, that's not afraid to spend a lot of money, and it's a situation that any manager could come into, probably, like you said, as long as he doesn't mess it up, and probably win a lot of games and get deep into October.
As Alex Bregman made very clear at the end of the season, this team doesn't lose. But if this team loses and they kind of gone away from, maybe like you said, they possibly could have a little more front office ownership continuity, is this on Joe Espada or is this on the front office? And, it shows what Dusty Baker really did for this team.
Well, I guess it matters how they lose. I mean, if they have an off season where they don't address some of their needs, and that winds up being a wart in the season, I mean, they need some relief help. They do. I did say they do have their closer back and Ryan Presley and their setup guy and Brian Abreu, but they are losing a couple of key members to their bullpen if they don't resign them. So if that's not addressed and their bullpen becomes an issue next year, then maybe that's on the front office. But if they get into the regular season and everything's been addressed, they fortify their bullpen, they have a backup catcher, maybe they got some starting pitching depth, and the team underperforms. If they're healthy, they underperform for whatever reason, or they start kicking the ball around, or they don't play hard. And maybe that's on Joe. But I think this is very much going to be the collaborative effort that we heard that Dana Brown wanted, that he's promised, that Joe Espada's promised. I think very much is going to be that. I mean, if you go back to the ALCS last year, Game 5, Astros are trailing 8th inning. Dusty Baker gets kicked out. They rally in the 9th inning, and the Astros make two moves that they probably wouldn't have made if Dusty was still in the dugout. And Joe Espada talked about this today. Pinch hit for Jeremy Pena, which is something Dusty never did. They ended up getting a base hit from Yainer Diaz, and then John Singleton comes off the bench for a walk, and then Altuve hits the 3-run homer. I mean, it was only half an inning, but Espada got the keys to the car right there and made a couple of moves that worked out brilliantly, at least in that game before they lost the 2 games at home. So I don't think anyone's going to be to blame if the Astros at least go to the CS or World Series. The expectations here are so high, but if they bow out in the first round or unbelievably don't make the playoffs, then we're going to have to point the finger at somebody. I'm not sure who that would be.
Hey, Brian, we haven't spoken to you since the Rangers won. So are they bitter in Houston, or are they like, we've won a lot, we're good?
I think there's a little of both. I mean, I think the fans will tell you, oh, well, we've got 2, you've got 1, but deep down inside them, man, they know they were close. I mean, they were 1 home win away from going to the World Series, and I think I would have liked their chances very much against the D-backs in that series. So, they can, say what they will about winning a couple of World Series, but, let's be honest, they come home with a chance to close out the ALCS with 2 games at home, and they can't do it. It's just unbelievable. This has happened now twice to the Astros, and it's probably cost them 2 World Series victories. I mean, in 2019, they lose 4 games at home in the World Series. They win 1 of those, they win another ring. And this year, I mean, I think if they can just close out the Rangers at home, win 1 home game out of 4, I think they go to the World Series, and they probably beat the D-backs. So, the expectations are so high here and the fact it was the Rangers, the teams, I mean, these 2 teams have built a pretty good rivalry here. In fact, I looked it up the other day. The Rangers and Astros winning back-to-back World Series titles. No teams in the same division have done that in 40 years. So this is going to be a really fun race next year with 2 teams that, both of them could win the World Series again, and they're their last 2 World Series winners. It's going to be a fun rivalry, but I think it really stuck in the craw of Astros fans, I think, to watch the Rangers celebrate, knowing that, man, they could have knocked them out with just 1 more win at home.
Brian, is Joe Espada, you said he's out on the field right now, is he out there painting the batter's eye so that the Astros hitters can't complain about how they can't hit at home anymore, or what?
No, the batter's eye looks untouched, although I would not surprise me if that changes at some point this year just because of all the whining we heard about. I mean, they already moved it out a little bit, but it really didn't seem to, do a lot of I mean, the Rangers came in here in Game 6 and 7 and just crushed the ball. So I think the batter's eye thing, I'm not buying into that too much. Both teams had to use it. And, last year the Astros had a historically great offense in the same ballpark. So, but it still wouldn't surprise me if they make some changes to the batter's eye because there is a lot going on out there. It's pretty busy.
Brian, does this mean with Dusty gone and Joe Espada in now, the end of the Martin Maldonado era in Houston? Because Dusty, listen, Houston Astro fans were clamoring for Diaz. People inside the organization were clamoring for Diaz. There was one guy, though, that kept Martin Maldonado in the lineup, and it was Dusty Baker. So Dusty's now retired and gone. Martin is a free agent. There's no way they bring him back, right?
Well, I mean, he could come back, but if he does, it would be under the clear understanding that it's a backup. And I think Martin knows that. I mean, Dana Brown's already said Yainer Diaz is going to be the starting catcher next year, and he has to be. I mean, the guy just crushes the ball. I mean, he held his own behind the plate as well, and I think he can only improve. But it goes back to maybe what I was talking about earlier about, the collaboration between the front office and the field, because like you said, Dusty was committed to Martin Maldonado behind the plate. I think the front office wanted Yainer Diaz behind the plate more. And, Dusty got the last call and got to do things his way. And, I don't think we're going to see that now under Espada. But there's no doubt that, Yainer Diaz is going to be the guy behind the plate. I mean, I think, he's a guy that, has 40 home run potential. I think he would have been in the Rookie of the Year race this year if he would have got enough at bats. But, the pitchers preferred throwing to Maldonado, and Dusty was really loyal to those veteran players. But if Maldonado comes back, it will certainly be maybe he's the guy who catches Verlander once a week or once every 5 days, and that's probably it.
Are there other positions that could be similar to Maldonado? I feel like the other 8 guys are like, when you go around, it's like, well, we'll just plug and play that person. So is it more of like, is there positions in the sense that like somebody would step in and more of like, say, a platoon role, like a lot of front offices want to go to?
Yeah, I think the only thing we might see differently is Chaz McCormick. Maybe, they take the reins off him and let him play a lot more. Dusty seemed hesitant to play McCormick at times, despite, what turned out to be a breakout year in center field. Ran out some other guys out there, especially early in the season. McCormick got hurt. It took a while for Dusty to, play him every day once he came back. But I think McCormick has earned the right to be the everyday starting center fielder. And I think we're going to see that. I think we'll see that, and that's something that maybe that Dusty wasn't on board with as much as he should have been, was playing Chaz McCormick. But you look around the rest of the team, and all the positions are set. With Tucker, the infield that they have, they signed Abreu at first; he's not going anywhere. Bregman, Altuve, Pena, of course Alvarez, and left fielder DH. So, Joe's coming in with a team that's loaded. Yeah, they have some decisions to make, but there's also things that are going to go on during the year that the front office would have liked that didn't go on this year, that they're, we'll see that happen with Joe as far as playing time behind the plate and in center field, specifically with McCormick. Was
it because Chaz was too fat, according to Dusty? Is that why?
Apparently, because he brings them banana pudding before every game.
But banana pudding is definitely saves the day for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Astros, ever since they let Springer walk, which, you can't blame them. They went on to win a World Series. They've sort of had a hard time finding some stability in center field. They traded away Miles Straw. They traded away Jose Siri. They had Jake Myers a couple of years ago. He got hurt in the ALDS against the White Sox. And McCormick's just been a guy who's sort of bubbled up to the top, and he really took advantage of that this year, but still probably did not play as much as he should have, even though he turned out to be a very capable player, offensively and defensively as well. He did a really solid job. We saw him make that big catch in the World Series last year in Philadelphia in Game 5. So I think center field and catcher are 2 positions where, the Astros are going to do things differently now than they did under Dusty Baker.
Could you see the Astros kind of go away from what they normally do and maybe trade one of the big league pieces for another big league piece, like Devin Williams as a bullpen piece, and give up maybe 1 or 2 of their big league pieces?
I think I could see that, but I think it's got to be a fringe guy. I just don't think they have the depth if they want to trade away one of their starters. I'm talking maybe trade Jake Myers, somebody along that line. They just don't have the talent right now at the upper minor leagues. They have some guys who could come in and play next year, but they just don't have, for years they had wave after wave of talent coming up, Correa, Springer, Bregman, and they just plug guys in and let guys walk in free agency and just replace them, replace Correa with Jeremy Pena. They just don't have that anymore. They've traded so many guys in the last few years, prospects, including a couple of big ones to get Verlander. I think it'll be very hard to trade an impact position player to get maybe the reliever that they're after. So I think free agency is definitely the way they're going to go. They have some fringe guys on the 26-man roster they can trade, but even though Bregman's going to be a free agent after next year, and Altuve, certainly he's not going anywhere. Cal Tucker's got a couple of years left. So all these guys are going to be back for a couple more years, at least this year anyway. And I think free agency is going to be how they're going to have to fill these spots that they need.
So, Brian, what's your dream offseason for them? You can be as realistic or unrealistic as you want. You talked about how they want to address the relief pitching, but what do you think, I guess, they should aim to be doing, knowing that they're not, going to be playing for Ohtani?
Yeah, I think they need to sign a couple of relievers. I think they need a left-handed reliever. I mean, they've struggled to get a lefty reliever for I don't know how long. I mean, last year in the playoffs, they didn't have a lefty reliever in the bullpen. Did they go after Aroldis Chapman, a guy who's like villain number one here at Minute Maid Park with all the battles he's had with the Yankees and now the Rangers? I would sign a back-end starting pitcher. I mean, they go 6-7 deep in starting pitching, but they got McCullers coming off an injury, Luis Garcia coming off an injury. I think we saw last year, and they were probably a starting pitcher short from where they would like to have been. They're going to sign a backup catcher. I still would like to see them probably sign maybe another position player, a left-handed bat, to come off the bench and help out. I mean, that's a lot of things at that point. You got a payroll that's already, up close to $200 million, but they're not far away. I mean, they just need a couple of tweaks, and they won 90 games last year and had tons of injuries. Like I said earlier, this could be a 100-win club next year with just a couple of moves here and there, and now they have a new manager that they hope can help them maybe squeeze out maybe 5-6 wins that they didn't have last year.
It's a strong division at the top too, Brian. That is impressive. AJ loves Seattle. You got Houston, Texas. It's a good top.
Going to be. Listen, Seattle can't be as bad as they were last year.
54%.
54%.
Well, that's true. They win 54% their money.
Yeah. No, they have to be better. This is their winning window, and they're wasting it.
Yeah. Capoto.
Oh, so great.
Officially on the hot seat now after his comments of 54%.
You think so?
He's got to be now. He pissed off more fans than anyone I've ever heard in my life. He pissed off every single Mariner fan there was. I don't think there was one fan that was like, yeah, Jerry, we're behind you. Let's try to win 54% of the games.
We love mediocrity.
Yeah. That would be like the Astros fans going, Dusty or Dana coming out and going, you know what, guys? We're not going to try this year. We're just going to try and finish 500 and see what happens. No, this is your window. The Astros have had a bigger window than most teams ever do.
Been like a decade.
Yeah. So
I thought what was great about the division was going into the final day of the regular season or the final weekend of the regular season, all three of those teams had a shot to either win the division or get the wild card or not make the playoffs, and two of them did. The Astros won the division, the Rangers got the wild card, Seattle was eliminated. But, all three of them were right there entering the final weekend of the season. So, yeah, I think I think we'll see more of that next year. I think it's going to be a very, very tough division to win, a very competitive division with all three of those teams.
All right. Now I got to thank you because you were just watching Joe Espada, and I don't think you were videoing him, but you were watching him, you were spying on him, kind of like you were spying on me opening day. Everybody needs to know that you were the one that videoed me embarrassingly tripping and falling, but you were also the first one to ask the question, and you wouldn't remember. It was a nothing thing, but you asked me the question. You had the most concerned look on your face. So I appreciate you caring, and yet you were kind of looking for me to get a little embarrassed. And fortunately, I was able to cash in on the tripping and falling bonus on opening day. So thank you for videoing that.
Yeah, I was worried about you out there. There were a lot of people in the stands that day. So I think somebody had told me before I got down there to ask you that it might have been a ruse. So I didn't know how to go about, and I didn't know you that well. So nope. I was kind of being delicate how to ask that question. But that was a lot of fun.
It was something that I don't remember who she was. And obviously I'd been there for probably 7 days at that point because we started on the road and then came home. But somebody in the back of the scrum, she was a younger reporter, and she kind of had her back kind of turned. And after I answered, she looked and she goes, "Did you do that on purpose?" And I was like, "I'm not going to tell." And then I got fired, and so nobody really knew until it all came back out in 2018.
What was I don't even remember what was the backstory now. Did you get some money out of that, or is that a bet? Or
yeah. Scott Feldman and Luke Gregerson each gave me $1,000 to take a dive. So